If I am found, the turning to me is inevitable. From recognition of me is liberation. By His Divine Presence, Avatar Adidar Samraj. Devotee, Beloved Lord, I would like to ask a question about the moment-to-moment turning of the faculties to you. When I feel myself recoiling from an incident or contracting or even feeling my vital shock, it is easier for me to see what I am doing and turn to you. But in other moments, when things are calmed down, when I am mediocre, when nothing is happening, that is when, by tendency, I automatically wander off. So I seem to be in one or another of these two situations. One in which there is obviously a crisis, and the other in which things are peaceful, and I am almost automatically in my head. Adidar. Since I am here to be turned to, why would you be mediocre? You say you are able to turn to me when you are having difficulty. Are you really turning to me? Or are you trying to turn away from the difficulty? Are you actually aware of me at any time? It is your devotional response to me that would allow the turning, not the nature of experience in the moment. If you are aware of me, then there would be no difference, one moment to the next, relative to this impulse to turn to me. Therefore, it would seem that you are simply not aware of me at any time. It is just that, when you are feeling self-satisfied, you do not feel like doing much other than being self-satisfied. And when you are feeling uncomfortable, you want to stop feeling uncomfortable. In both cases, you are reacting to or associating with your own conditions and not turning to me. What is more, you are not really aware of the condition in which your experience is arising. If you were, crisis or difficulty would not be required to motivate you to transcend your moment-to-moment experience. Thus, you are neither finding me through devotional recognition, nor are you understanding your own egoic activity. Fundamentally, then, you are not practicing at all. You are simply occupied with self. Sometimes you are satisfied with yourself and sometimes not. When you are not satisfied with me, you like to console yourself with some kind of idea of me in order to relieve yourself from the difficulty. But when you are satisfied with yourself, you are not particularly moved to resort to me. This is the devotionless life, the godless, guru-less life of egoity. In that disposition, I am nothing more than a talisman or a good luck symbol, a magical idea. You are simply occupied with conditional self-existence. You are egoically self-identified with the body-mind complex. In every moment in which there is egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex, there is the perception of duality, opposites, contradiction, difference. When there is identification with the very divine self, or the self-nature, self-condition, self-state of reality itself, there is no difference. There is no duality, no contradiction. In every moment in which there is egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex, The ego self is thus and thereby presumed to be a separate consciousness occupied with the body-mind complex. When the body-mind complex is transcended, the divine self is realized to be transcendental in nature, not caused and not causing. The world of the body-mind complex is a pattern of causes and effects. No ultimate cause can be found in it. Everything that is observed is an effect of conditional causes and is itself a cause for other conditions. The separate self is experienced to be both a cause and an effect. It seems to be able to cause conditions to happen. It also seems to be itself the effect of causes. That self is the ego. It is identified with the body-mind complex. It is the body-mind complex. It is an illusion. It is bondage. It is suffering. All conditional causes and all conditional effects arise and pass in a flow of unending and beginningless changes. Only the very divine self, or the self-nature, self-condition, the self-state of reality itself, is truth, the true position. The divine self is not the body-mind complex, nor is it bound by the body-mind complex. The divine self is transcendental, prior to the body-mind complex, and yet, in its view, no difference is made by the body-mind complex. The divine self is not different from the body-mind complex, nor is the divine self identical to the body-mind complex in its presumed separateness. It is simply that whatever appears to arise is a transparent or merely apparent and non-necessary and intrinsically non-binding modification of the divine self. Therefore, the divine self is inherently free of all causes, all effects, and all action. In the great tradition of humankind, the 6 developmental stages of life pass through and beyond modes of identification with the body-mind complex, or points of view identified with the body-mind complex, such that, in the profundity of the 6th stage of life, the nature of the divine self as transcendental, but not yet transcendental and spiritual, is realized. In the reality wave Adidam, the only by me revealed and given 7th stage of life is the demonstration of the non-difference between the divine or transcendental and spiritual self and all arising conditions. Whatever arises is tacitly and inherently divinely self-recognized as non-different, as the divine self. This realization is my self-nature, self-condition, self-state, and my self-revelation. My self-revelation is given by means of avataric incarnation, not through the communication of philosophy or modes of mind or mythologies. Therefore, if I am devotionally recognized in and as my very divine form and presence and state here, bodily shown, then one who has thus become my devotee turns to me, is attracted to me, turned beyond conditional identification to my state. This manifests as a process of purification, a life of constant ego-transcending practice, a life of surrender to me, in which the total body-mind becomes available to the transmission of my own person and transcendental spiritual presence. By means of this transmission, my devotee comes to understand and transcend and altogether be purified of the conditions of egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex. And by means of this transmission of my own person and transcendental spiritual presence, my devotee is transcendently spiritually awakened to the capability for the perfect practice, which grows into the 7th-stage demonstration. This is a summary of the fundamentals of the way that I have revealed and given, and of which I am the perpetual divine avataric self-revelation. The reality of Adidam is practiced only if there is devotional recognition of me, moment to moment. I have not given you some mere technique to apply to yourself, whether in difficult moments or in mediocre moments. The reality of Adidam exists only in this responsive practice of whole bodily devotional recognition of me. The practice of Adidam is not merely about what you do with the faculties. The practice of Adidam is devotional recognition of me, in which you are attracted to my state. On this basis, the faculties move to me, becoming indifferent to their objects and from patterns that otherwise arise. This is devotional and, in due course, transcendental spiritual communion with me, and this is the means of purification, the basis of ever-intensifying self-understanding. The reality of Adidam does not begin until you find me, by devotionally recognizing me. Then you are turned to me, and you will turn to me. On that basis, you will live by my explicit instruction, obedient to and conformed to my person. On that basis, the reality of Adidam fulfills itself, not on any other basis, not on any basis that is abstracted from me, not on the basis of any more self-applied technique, and not on the basis of any involvement in any culturally, or cooperatively manifest, or corporately manifested substitution for my person. This practice I just outlined to you is an esoteric way, an ego-transcending way. It is the uniquely by me revealed and given transcendental spiritual way. Merely finding your experience to be unpleasant in any moment is not enough. Mere mediocre is obviously not enough. If you have not found me, you cannot locate me. If you cannot locate me, then it is not good enough. If you are not attracted to me, moment to moment, you have not found me. In any moment in which you are merely displeased with your experience, or in which you are otherwise being mediocre, you are not attracted to me. If you are turned to me, you are not mediocre, nor are you merely concerned about your uncomfortable situation. Whatever it may be in the moment makes no difference what your apparent experience is. It makes no difference what arises conditionally, because I am here. You have found me. You have devotionally recognized me. You are moved to me, and therefore you turn to me. That is the practice of Adidam. The fundamental matter is to find me, or devotionally recognize me. If you are self-involved, then you have not found me. You do not devotionally recognize me. You are not moved to me, and you will not turn to me. If you have not found me, then whatever you may be doing that you think is turning to me is not actually turning to me. In that case, you are simply performing some exercise with yourself. It is self-manipulative activity. That is not devotion to me. Devotion to me is what you must always do, whether the moment is relatively difficult or relatively easy. The conditions that arise make no difference. If the conditions that arise do make a difference, then you are not devotionally recognizing me. Instead, you are turned on yourself. I say, when there is egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex, the conscious self is presumed to be separate, and is thus presumed to exist in order to cause conditions or otherwise to be the effect of conditions. When egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex is, by my divine avataric grace, transcended, there is only prior and most ultimately divine self-abiding as the self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of reality itself. Why is that statement not enough to enlighten everyone? Since what I said is the case, why is it not enough for me simply to say it in order for you to realize the truth? If egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex is simply the identification of consciousness itself with limitation, with separateness, with duality, with difference, and if prior self-abiding transcends all difference, then why not choose prior self-abiding? Why would you not do that instead? Well, it would certainly be preferable if you did, but the fact is you cannot, you do not, you will not. Therefore, it is not enough for me to say this. Divine self-realization cannot be established by mere philosophical proposition. The nature of divine self-realization can be stated clearly as a philosophical proposition, but that is not the same as transmitting the realization itself. It is not as if you are merely making a bad choice, as if you are choosing to be egoically self-identified with the body-mind complex and doing so ignorantly. And therefore, all you have to do is come to a clear understanding that to abide as the true self, or in the prior condition, is truth, is liberation, is enlightenment. And then, having cleared at that point, you would immediately be established as the true self. It is not enough realization. It is not enough. Realization is not established in any such proposition. Something true has been said by this explanation of mine, but the explanation in and of itself is not sufficient. Why not? The why not is what must be understood. It is not a merely philosophical matter. Egoity is not established on a merely philosophical basis. Egoity does not exist merely on the basis of an error in judgment or as a bad choice. If that were the case, all that would be necessary is for a clear communication to be made about that error, and you could make a right choice, the right choice. It is not a matter of a wrong choice versus a right choice. Divine self-realization cannot be established by mere philosophical argument. It cannot be established on the basis of the generating of any conditions in the mind or in the body-mind complex altogether. Divine self-realization inherently transcends the body-mind self. The realization of the divine depends upon the direct revelation of the divine and your response to that. The egoic self-identification with the body-mind complex is not being made merely on the basis of a bad decision or an ignorant decision. Rather, it is established on the basis of an activity. The presumed separate I, the conditional I, which is egoically self-identified with the body-mind complex, and which is, in fact, the body-mind complex, is established by and exists on the basis of the activity of self-contraction of and as the body-mind complex. This activity must be transcended. Explanation does not transcend it. A superior philosophical thought does not transcend it. A superior belief does not transcend it. No condition or occupation of body-mind complex transcends egoity, the activity of self-contraction, or the disposition that is egoically self-identified with the body-mind complex. The self-contraction, the self-not, the action of egoity must be transcended through devotional recognition response to that which transcends it. that is known only by direct revelation and not by mere philosophical propositions. The truth is not merely to be believed. The truth must be revealed. There must be the response to it, and it must be realized. This is grace. This is the Guru function, which is a divine function. The reality of Adidam is founded on this truth revelation. This revelation is given through my avataric incarnation here, through the direct self-revelation of my divinely avatarically born bodily human divine form, shown here visibly. By this divine avataric means, there is the transmission of my transcendental spiritual presence, which reveals my very and self-evidently divine state. Participation in this revelation is the reality way of Adidam. It is not participation merely in the philosophy of that revelation. There certainly are various things to listen to and understand, as in the case of this verbal discourse, for example, but the way itself is not based upon any utterance of mine. Rather, the way itself is based upon the devotional recognition response of my devotee to my avatarically born and avatarically self-manifested divine form and presence and state. If you devotionally recognize me, you will be turned to me. If you turn to me, you will be purified of self-contraction, ego possession, and all its results, all its patterning in the body-mind complex, and you will, in due course, enter into transcendental spiritual communion with me, and ultimately into the most perfect realization of my divine person and state. Previous to most perfect divine self-realization, every moment of apparent psychophysical experiencing or existence is associated with a sense of separate self, and the pattern and the perception of numberless differences or opposites. That pattern cannot be magnified. That pattern cannot be comprehended. It has no initial cause. It has no final result. The world that is apparent to the body-mind self has no discernible ultimate cause, nor any discernible ultimate end. The arising world is not patterned for the sake of giving experience to egos. The world has no purpose, then. It is not purposed. It is not caused. In any ultimate cause, in any ultimate sense. It is caused in every moment. The world is not arising for a purpose. The world is arising as an effect. It is the evidence of conditional or psychophysical causes. In all its forms, gross and subtle, the world will perpetually arise in various modes of space and time and conditional experiencing, unfathomable, beginningless and endless, and no ultimate purpose will be served by it. There is no ultimate end phenomenon in the world, any more than there is an ultimate end phenomenon for egoic life. Life simply goes on, and then you die, always as an arbitrary moment. It is not ultimately satisfactory, and therefore it does not bring anything to an end, except the apparent cycle of experiencing in the present bodily mode. But the seed of persistence is there. Experience will, must, and does continue to arise, because the roots of the arising of the world are in the seeds of action, in the depth dimension of the body-mind complex. The causes of the world are not merely in some original physical event, act of creation, or Big Bang. The seeds of the world, the causes of the world, are subtler. They are in the root dimension, in the root of arising. The ultimate root of what is arising is the divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of reality itself, as it is. The divine is the self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of reality itself, the condition in which all conditions are apparently arising. The divine is not the cause of the world. The divine is the domain of the world, coincident with and not different from the world, while perfectly transcending the world. The realization of truth itself, which is reality itself, or real or causal God, requires the transcending of egoity, therefore of self-contraction, therefore of the body-mind complex, therefore of the entire conditional domain, the entire cosmic domain, the entire psychophysical domain of apparent present time and potential experiencing. Truth itself, or reality itself, or real or causal God, is the divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of all and all. Truth itself, or reality itself, is the real or causal God, is divine self-realization. In the most perfect realization of reality itself, the divine truth perfectly outshines the conditional universe in its own inherent and indivisible brightness. The divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of reality itself is revealed through the divine function, traditionally called Guru, which is manifesting uniquely in and as my divinely avatarically born divine form and person. My avataric incarnation as the divine Guru function is self-manifested, transcendently, spiritually, and perfectly divinely in bodily human divine form. If I am not devotionally recognized, then there is no turning to me beyond the act of self-contraction. There is no turning out from this not to me. The reality of Adidam is the devotionally responsive turning of the body-mind complex to me, beyond self-contraction, in devotional and in due course transcendental spiritual communion with my divine form and presence and state. This must be said, and I have said it. I have also summarized the process of devotional communion with me in philosophical terms. The reality way of Adidam is itself devotional recognition response to me. In any moment in which devotional recognition response to me is true, you turn to me and are entered into devotional communion with me, beyond self-reference, beyond self-contraction, beyond bondage, to all perceiving and thinking. In this eager, forgetting devotional communion with me, there is the purification of the body-mind complex, and there is the ever-deepening process of self-understanding. When this devotional turning to me is transcendently spiritually awakened in me, on the basis of constant searchless beholding of me, consistent right life obedience to me, and tacitly established perfect knowledge of me, self-understanding is magnified. Purification becomes more effective. Equanimity is more profoundly established. And in due course, there is the awakening of the unique capability that I call true hearing, or most fundamental self-understanding. On that basis, my transcendental spiritual self-revelation establishes the perfect practice of Adidam through my gift of the thumbs, which is necessarily accompanied by fundamental psychophysical equanimity, the characteristics of true and free renunciation, perpetual profoundest devotion to me, and the establishment of my divine transcendental spiritual self-nature, self-condition, and self-state as the basis of the further demonstration of the reality of Adidam. Devotion to me is awakened through sighting my divinely avatarically born bodily human divine form and listening to my divine avataric leelas and my divine avataric word. When this becomes the finding of me, the recognition of me, then devotion to me is established. The reality of Adidam is not established before then. Until then, You can sight my divinely avatarically born bodily human divine form. You can listen to the stories of my life work. You can study my reality word. And all of that continues until there is the true devotional recognition response to me. Then the reality wave of Adidam can begin. The reality wave of Adidam is more and more elaborately manifested by applying oneself to my explicit word of instruction, by participating in the constant process of invocation of me, by cooperatively associating with other devotees, and by being accountably involved in the culture of the sacred domain of devotion to me. However, the reality of Adidam is not reducible to philosophical summations or simply to words of mine. It is not reducible to stories of my life and work, or what in that case becomes effectively mythology, not necessarily meaning something false, but something that exists only in the modes of pictures in the mind. My instruction is explicit. It must be followed explicitly in its details. My instruction is not there for you to bargain with or to revise into some mode of performance on your own part, abstracted from me. If you abandon my fundamental instruction, which has to do with the devotional recognition response to me and the devotional turning to me, then no matter how correctly you attempt to follow my instruction, you will still not be practicing the way I have revealed and given. You cannot set my fundamental instruction aside and reduce its way to techniques or ideas alone. All such content can be fitted into the body-mind complex in its independence from me, in its self-contraction. Thus, you may think the practice of Adidam is about turning the faculties to me. Yes, it is, but it is not merely about turning the faculties. It is about me, turning the faculties to me, not by objectifying me into something from which you are detached. Rather, on the basis of present-time devotional recognition of me, the faculties turn to me responsively. Then it makes no difference whether the moment is difficult in your experience and you want to get out of the conditions of the moment, or whether the moment is pleasurable and you want to stay in it, or whether the moment is simply mediocre and you are wandering aimlessly in it. It makes no difference what arises or what the tendencies or patterns may be. For my devotee, every moment of practice is entirely about the devotional recognition response to me. That is what makes the practice itself true and profound. Only on the basis of real devotion are the faculties turned to me. The turning of the faculties to me is a response to me. It is not a technique for manipulating the faculties themselves. The whole body-mind must devotionally respond to me through the devotional recognition of me, the finding of me in this moment, and this moment, and this moment, moment to moment. If I am not found, the turning to me does not happen. What you said to me earlier is about the turning to me not happening. You said it was happening in difficult moments, but not in other moments. Actually, it is not happening at all. Not when things are difficult, and not when you are mediocre or self-indulgent, because the turning to me is not something you do with yourself. It is not something you do with the faculties of the body-mind complex. It is not something you do to the body-mind complex. It is something the body-mind complex does in its devotional recognition response to me when I am found. If I am found, the turning to me is inevitable. It occurs through attraction. It is not a strategy that you engage through self-manipulation. It is a response into which you are entered voluntarily, recognizing me moment to moment. If you are simply ego-possessed, you can try to reorient the body-mind self to me. But what does that mean? You will be somehow or other moving attention toward a picture of me or an idea of me. That is not me. That is my sign. But merely moving attention toward a picture of me or an idea of me is not devotional recognition of me. Devotional recognition of me is tacit participation in my avatarity self-revealed divine form and presence and state. When you are tacitly profoundly turned to me, moment to moment, then there is openness to my avatarity self-transmitted divine presence, and I become transcendently spiritually recognizable, transcendently spiritually known, transcendently spiritually attractive. That is a unique process. It is not what so many seem to think it is. The body-mind complex is itself a system of energies, and by manipulating it, or having it be manipulated in various circumstances, those energies are perceptible. They move, they generate sensations and experiences. That is not me. At most, the energies of the body-mind complex, may be moved as an effect of my transmission, but to know me transcendently spiritually is a unique matter. I always already transcend the body-mind complex. I always already transcend the energy system of the body-mind complex. I always already transcend the potential experiences with which the body-mind complex is associated by its own nature as a structure. Therefore, to feel free-floating sensations in the body, to feel rushes of energy somehow rising up in the body or circulating somehow in the body, up, down, in and out, whatever mode of movement and experience, however it shows itself apparently, none of that is me. That is not transcendental spiritual communion with me. That is simply a kind of self-stimulated excitement. Transcendental spiritual locating and knowing of me occurs in a state of psychophysical equanimity, receptivity, and searchlessness. To find me transcendently spiritually is a unique and profound matter, and it is shown only in true devotion. When the body-mind complex is sufficiently purified and established in equanimity through responsive devotion to me, then there can be this tacit surrender and receptivity to the brightness of my person. And how my brightness or my transcendental spiritual presence may show itself in any individual's case is to be seen. The reality way of Adidam is not about the fulfillment of any of the first 6 stages of life. Rather, the reality way of Adidam is about the transcending of the first 6 stages of life. Therefore, it is associated with a unique process, not something in the mode of the great path of return, wherein the stages of life are entered into in a kind of evolutionary progress. Thus, the map of the spiritual or 4th to 5th stage and transcendental 6th stage course of evolutionary unfoldment is not the map of the transcendental and spiritual process of the reality way of Adidam, which is the 7th stage way from the beginning. The purification of the body-mind complex, the establishment of psychophysical equanimity, the locating and knowing of my transcendental spiritual presence, the release of the body-mind complex from the activity of self-contraction, the infilling of the body-mind complex by my transcendental spiritual presence, descending from infinitely above, beyond and prior to all the modes of experience that may arise as an effect of that transcendental spiritual sensitivity to me, the magnification of renunciation that shows itself in the samadhi of the thumbs. Such is the nature of the transcendental spiritual process in the reality way of Adidam. The reality way of Adidam is about transcending the developmental or first 6 stages of life. Therefore, the samadhis of the reality way of Adidam are unique. The reality way of Adidam is not about the characteristics of the 4th and the 5th stages of life. It is not about the characteristics of the first 5 stages of life altogether, nor is it about the characteristics of the 6th stage of life. The reality way of Adidam is about divine transcendental spiritual self-realization, established by means of devotional communion with me, and the complete availability of the totality of the total body-mind complex to my bright transmission, such that the samadhi of the thumbs is established on the basis of devotion, purification, equanimity, and renunciation. And through my gift of the thumbs, the divine transcendental spiritual self-nature, self-condition and self-state of reality itself is revealed by me as me. The radical self-manifestation of the thumbs establishes the disposition that is the true witness, not the observer, the mere witness, the non-causative witness consciousness that is inherently and absolutely freestanding prior to the body-mind complex, causing none of it, affected by none of it. This is the basis for the perfect practice of Adidam. The full culture of devotion to me is the renunciate culture of the perfect practice. That is the demonstration of the reality way of Adidam in the fullest sense, the complete sense, and that demonstration is most perfect in the only by me revealed and given seventh stage realization, which is the perfect renunciate demonstration of all in all transcending demonstration, the perfect demonstration of devotion to me. Therefore, none of the reality way of Adidam is based upon a strategy of self-manipulation, none of it, nor is the reality way of Adidam based on any kind of abstracting of philosophy or techniques from me, nor is the reality way of Adidam based on a culture abstracted from me that generates substitutes for my person. The reality of Adidam is about the devotional recognition of me, avataravely incarnate here, and about living on the basis of my precise and explicit instructions. If you do not do exactly as I indicate, but instead engage in patterns of doings abstracted from me, your so-called practice will merely be an ego-based performance. Only if you carry out my explicit instructions on the basis of persistent, moment-to-moment turning to me, will the carrying out of my instructions be fruitful. It is the fulfilling of my instructions in all their details, on the basis of persistent, whole bodily devotional recognition response to me, that makes action into right practice. It is not the doings in and of themselves, but the complete conforming of your doings and my instructions, and the doing of them in moment-to-moment devotional communion with me. Therefore, you must not abstract Adidam from me. To do so is what I call self-guruing. It is fruitless. It is not Adidam. What you described to me at the beginning of this exchange was a kind of self-guruing practice, wherein under the various circumstances of life, you try to remember to turn the faculties to me. This is an ego-possessed strategy. It is not really turning to me, and it is not fruitful, and it is not profound, and it is not consistent. It is a form of seeking, or the dramatization of egoity itself. It is a form of the self-manipulation, and therefore of psychophysical bondage. It is not the life of devotional communion with me. I am transcendental, spiritual, freestanding, divinely present. To commune with me is not to be established as a body-mind complex. To commune with me is to be entered into the domain of my person, my presence, and my state. This makes the practice of reality way of Adidam effective.